Well, good morning, everybody. It's good to be back. I've got a couple verses I'm going to read and talk about today. I thought that where I got these verses from was from a cemetery I visited yesterday. And on the wall of the mausoleum, it had these two verses that was printed into granite. And I sat there and I read that just to see what kind of Bible they was using. And I decided I'd come home and look at it more carefully. You know, sometimes we can see verses, but if we don't study the verses and we don't understand fully what the verses are saying, then we can miss out. And it was imprinted on both sides of the wall. So I'm thinking, the front side, I think it said, do this in remembrance of me. Well, we see that on the front of the church, on the logo there on the tithe plate, where the tithe plates go, do this in remembrance of me. But then on the back side, it had these two verses here. I'm in Matthew 26. I'm going to start out with verse 26. Now, this is a familiar story to everybody that wants to follow along. And as they were eating, that's the disciples, Jesus took bread and blessed it and brake it and gave it to the disciples and said, take, eat, this is my body. Now, before I go to the next verse, I want to try to explain this the best I can. And as they were eating, meaning they was eating other food, they was eating another meal, but at the end of this meal, then Jesus springs this bread on them. It says, and as they were eating, Jesus took bread and blessed it, meaning that he bowed his head to the Father and he thanked the Father for this particular piece of bread. Was it special bread when it comes to it being a special made bread, or was it just bread? Or was Jesus just using this bread as an example of flesh? Is what he was trying to show these disciples here. He took and he blessed it, and then he broke it. He broke it in pieces. Back then, they had loaves of bread that might be 12, it could have been 12 inches long, or it could have been longer, but it wasn't sliced up. It had to be broken in pieces. He had to break the bread for the 12 of the disciples that was there. So he had to have a piece for each one of these disciples. And he gave it to the disciples and said, take, meaning I'm going to hand you the bread. Like I've got this card right here in my hand. Jesus took his hand out and he handed them the bread. And what they had to do is they had to use their hand to take the bread. Now I realize I'm being very super elementary here, but them disciples had to take the bread. But now listen to what Jesus said. Jesus said, take and eat. Take in the bread and eat the bread. This is my body. Now, they knew that it wasn't the flesh of Jesus. But Jesus was telling them here, this is a symbolization of my broken body. When Jesus took his hands and broke the pieces up, his body was also going to be torn to shreds as well. And he told them here, take, eat, this is my body. Now they knew it wasn't flesh, that he peeled off flesh from his side to say, here, eat this bloody mess of my muscles and my meat of my side. He was using it as a way of them to understand that, look, we're in this room tonight, we're eating, because when the time comes, I'm going to go to the cross. Now, he didn't say that right here in this particular verse. And he took the cup and gave thanks. Now, you notice that he blessed the bread, which is saying a prayer, and now he gives thanks. Who did he give thanks to? He gave thanks to God the Father for supplying the wine that them disciples were going to drink. He says, and he took the cup and gave thanks and gave it to them, saying. Now, obviously, you don't break up the wine. You have a certain amount of wine. I've got a certain amount of water in this bottle. He had a certain amount of water, or that was that wine that they used back then. And each of them was able to take in that little bit for each one until it was all around the table. He says, drink ye all of it. Now, you know that's what I noticed on that mausoleum wall, is when that word, drink ye all of it. Now, I'm no theologian. I never have ever claimed to be anything smart at all. But you know, if I was to take this bottle of water right here and I was real thirsty, I would want to get every drop of water out of this bottle. I wouldn't want to waste any of it. But how many times have I took this container and left just very little bit at the bottom and then forget about it? Is the water still water? Can I still drink it? Will it kill me to drink old water? Probably not. But what do we normally do? We throw out the water that we don't use. We toss it in the trash. Jesus told him, these 12 here, drink ye all of it. For this is my blood of the New Testament. Now, the blood wasn't shed as yet. Jesus hadn't went to die on the cross yet. He's leading up to it in the next couple of pages in Matthew 26, 27, 28. He's going toward the cross. This is the supper that they was having as they was all together in one room in one area. For this is the blood of the New Testament. Was they drinking blood far as the wine? Was it blood tasting? No. It was simply nothing but the wine that he gave as a symbolic gesture of the blood that was going to be shed on Calvary's cross. And it says that this is my blood of the New Testament, which is shed for many for the remission of sins. See, this blood was going to be shed. It hadn't been shed as of yet. But let me tell you what, I realize there's another verse down here where he talks about it more. He won't drink anymore until he gets into the kingdom of heaven. But let me tell you what I feel like that I actually saw that caused me to want to do this message. When I seen them words, drink ye all of it. You know, I'm afraid that a lot of so-called religious house of prayer is not interested in drinking at all. They're not interested in taking all of the blood. And you know, Jesus told him here, drink ye all of it. Now they had 12 people with a container that they was all drinking from the same bottle for the most part. It wasn't individually poured out like it is today in the little cups. They probably each one took a swallow, and it went all the way around the room, and when it got to the last one, then I assumed that all of the wine was gone. But he told them to drink ye all of it. He didn't tell them to eat all of the bread, but he told them here to drink ye all of it. You know, I think it would behoove us to drink whatever he has for us to drink. In obedience, in humility, in our general love for him. When I saw this on that wall yesterday, it asked me a question. Am I drinking all of the blood of the wine? Now, you know, the Bible says what is flesh, and what is spirit. And they that worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth. See, that bread was going to go out through the waste. That wine that them disciples took in was going to go out into the waste. But see, Jesus was only trying to show them that there was something more important. That this particular day they was gathered because they didn't realize, these disciples didn't really realize the heavenly calling of Jesus. They only saw Jesus in a limited form, in a human form, in a fleshly form. They did not understand the fullness of Jesus because they had never been to heaven. See, Jesus came from heaven. He knew about heaven. He designed heaven. He is going to prepare a place so that people that believe in him could go to that place called heaven. But these disciples didn't fully understand all there was about Jesus. Can you only imagine if they was able to ever gain the full knowledge of what Jesus was thoroughly about at that time? And then he tells them here to drink ye all of it. Did they eat all of the bread? More than likely. Did Jesus have to tear off the bread so equally that each one would have so much of the bread? I mean, did he have to give just this little bit so that he would have enough at the end for the person at the very end to have a piece of bread too? He blessed it because he knew that he was going to Calvary to pay that sin payment. Because that's what it says right here in this last verse that we was just reading at. But I say unto you, I will not drink henceforth or from now on of this fruit of the vine until that day when I drink it new with you in my Father's kingdom. See, Jesus knew he had to go and fulfill the cross. All he's asking us to do is to drink ye all of it. Now, we know we don't have wine that's going to save us today. We don't have bread that is going to save us today. He was using that as a picture of, from here on out, I'm not going to be with you anymore. After the death, I'm not going to be with you other than for them few days right there at the end is I'm going to be with you, but I'm going back to my Father. I'm going to the Father. And I'm going to drink the wine there anew when you get to that place called heaven. See, the disciples never saw heaven. They saw Jesus. They believed in Jesus. But one of them didn't. One of them disciples didn't believe in Jesus. He was right there with him. He held the money in his hand. But it didn't help him because as soon as he turned in Jesus, he went off and hung himself. He was done with the money. He threw the money on the ground. The money didn't mean nothing to him. What is Jesus wanting from us today? Does he want all of you? You know, that's a question I think that we need to ask ourselves. Does he have all of you? Thank you for watching.